And welcome back to the episode. It's Cheers, me, your boy Eli.
It's me, Joe.
And we're here to talk about Blue Beetle, the long awaited new superhero movie from DC. And I think this is the second one, right? This is this.
You mean the second one this year? Yes.
Yes. The second one that came out this year, because the first one was Flash, and I think that's the only one left, right?
Yeah, I believe the new Aquaman comes out next year.
That sounds about right.
And I mean, if you've been trying to keep up with the state of the DC cinematic universe stuff, yeah, it's a bit.
It's weird.
Yeah, it's a bit all over the place. But as far as we can understand, Blue Beetle is supposed to be like part of the new continuity that James Gunn and
Peter
Co.
Safran, yeah.
Yeah, and Co. are doing now. That's what he said.
Yeah, and this, there's a lot of things to talk about this movie. Not in a negative sense, but in like, oh, I hope this does well, because there's been a lot of talks recently about how it might not do great, but I feel like it'll do fine.
Yeah, a lot of those early box office projections that sometimes come out, and yeah, a lot of them have been sort of saying that Blue Beetle might be a flop.
And people are like, oh, is that gonna affect like I think it'll be fine. We won't know until when it happens, and that I trust the people at at DC right now with James Gunn and Peter and all those guys over there. And I mean, unless you're like Wonder Woman.
Yeah,
that's a different story entirely.
That's a different story entirely.
Yeah, but no. So we just came back from watching the movie. The way we tend to do this, for those of you who are new here, we like to give a 1 minute thought on the movie, usually like a 1 minute review or kind of thing, and then we go into more detail as we go along. And usually this is very spoiler free. I doubt we would, break that commitment.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything in here that would warrant us to go full spoilers.
No.
But yeah, we generally try to keep it on the down low.
Yeah. Anyways, so we'll start off with Joey. Go ahead.
All right, so Blue Beetle is, I think, a very solid superhero movie. Jaime, I think, is a very likable protagonist. His whole relationship with his family is very solid, and probably one of the best parts of the movie. The fight scenes are pretty awesome, especially towards the end, the big climax. They do have a bit of creativity in there. I will say, I think some of the cinematography is great. I think the only maybe downside is probably just some pacing issues, as well as a bit of the writing, especially when it comes to our big bad. They kind of feel a bit too cartoony and also underdeveloped at the same time. Like, it feels like there could have been more to do with the villain, but besides that, I think it's a very solid superhero movie, and it does seem like a step in the right direction in terms of maybe DC's tone when it comes to movies.
All right, and those are your thoughts. Now it's time for my thoughts. So, Blue Beetle, as a comic book fan and someone who always looks forward to a little bit of representation here and there, I am glad to say I am very pleased with this movie. While it may not be a perfect movie, I feel it is a movie that aims and reaches the audience it needs to reach. That being said, there are some issues with it. I do agree with pacing issues. For me, dialogues is, especially in that first act, were a little rough. But at the end of the day, the heart of the movie is centered around Jaime and his relationship with his family, and it's really the core of what this movie's about, and very much about why that's important to him. The villain herself, while being cartoony, I do feel is a little lacking in some areas. I do wish it was a little more impactful, especially what they wanted to go with. But yes, I do fully enjoy this movie. So obviously, the first thing we're going to talk about is Blue Beetle himself, Jaime Reyes. I love that guy.
Yeah, I think he's a very likable protagonist.
Yeah, he goes through a lot of stuff, and when I mean that his relationship with his family is very important, to him. It's sort of like the big theme of the movie is the importance of family, especially with him and like sort of the culture that he's grew up on, and as to why that's important. Like we all seen from the trailers, like they're out there supporting him at his like first job.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's like it's a very tight knit group. I don't remember the names of most of the actors, but they all do very well in their parts.
Mhm.
George Lopez is the crazy uncle, conspiracy guy, and I I will say like it definitely just feels like there are some moments where it just feels like George Lopez is just kind of hamming it up a little bit.
Yeah, especially early in the beginning of the movie. But he at the same time he has this very like emotional speech to give Jaime, where that really like hits the core on what for me, and I was like, yeah, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, you know when George Lopez's character is allowed to like actually do like other things besides being comic relief, yeah, it does actually
Mm.
hit well, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, not to say that George Lopez can't act or anything, but I mean, it's like, all right, yeah, all right,
Mm.
this is a good role for the character to have, right?
Yeah, and like probably one of my favorite members of the family was probably the dad. The dad himself was like really sort of like very emotional and very supportive of his son. It's great to see such positive father figures nowadays, kind of stuff.
Yeah, like he's like the wise dude, always like saying like, hey, listen, we're a family, we can do anything, as long as we stick together, kind of thing,
Hmm.
and which is like core of the movie, right? Like like power of friendship and family and all that stuff.
Hmm. And the reason that we say like the idea of family is important, especially for Jaime, is that it's meant to contrast the villain's whole thing because it's like and we'll go into it more because the main villain um, she's Cord but not Ted Cord kind of thing, but like
Ted Cord's sister, I believe, I forget her first name because yeah, because she has her niece Jenny Cord, who is the daughter of Ted Cord.
the second Blue Beetle.
Yeah, who's very like against her aunt's ways of running the company, pretty
Hmm.
much going full on, putting a front of being like, oh, we're like a good like beneficiary. We help all these places and whatever, but it's like actually kind of like a military like
Hmm.
weapons engineering company, and she's like, hey, we got to stop making these weapons, and like
Hmm.
her aunt is like, no.
But we need to make money.
Yeah, like
Hmm. Yeah, so like it's very much like that. And like I said, like Jaime himself is very likable. Like he goes through a lot of things, especially when it comes with the armor, with the scarab itself. And like I'll be honest, I'm very impressed with the way they did the scarab. There's some things that I'm like, I kind of see why you deviate away from that. But there's something about like the comics guy in me that makes me go like, I kind of wish I kept that.
mhm.
Because like in the comics, so Jaime in the comics is the third Blue Beetle after so Ted Cord was the second one. Uh, Dan Gareth was the first Blue Beetle. Then yeah, the Ted Cord second Blue Beetle, and there's a lot of there were some nods to the fact to how Ted Cord was actually in the comics through this movie. Very little, not like 100% accurate kind of shit. But there's some stuff, and I'll talk about that later. But yeah, in the comics, he's the third Blue Beetle. He takes over after Ted Cord's death, and he's kind of like a lost kid because he's like, oh, what do I do? I I I got these powers out of nowhere. I just happened upon them. But like he kind of grows with him. Becomes his own hero kind of stuff. So you kind of see a bit of that in here. Uh, but the thing that makes it different is that the Scarab itself is very antagonistic at points in the comics, while in the movie they make it more, you know, I don't want to say complacent, but like willing to work with him, I guess. You know?
Right, like I guess what you're trying to say is that in the comics, it takes a while for Jaime to like get control of the Scarab,
Mm-hmm.
while in the movie, like uh, they're like initially it's like, oh, it kind of does its own thing, mainly just to protect the user,
Mhm.
but eventually they sort of get on sort of an equal. They sort of come to a quick understanding, like, hey, listen, I am in control,
Mhm.
kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and I totally understand why they kind of deviated from that because then it's one of those things, and we've talked about this before when it comes to films, right? There's some things you need to cut and some things you need to change because we only have a certain amount of time.
Mhm.
So like to make it to change it up to make it more of the way it is, I totally understand. But there's a part of me that was like, man, I kind of want to see him like struggle with that scarab and shit. But but that's why I have like other things like Young Justice and shit.
Mhm.
So it's not that big of a deal, big of an issue for me. But yeah, in terms of like I'm gonna butcher his name because like because it's very like Latin American. Uh,
The main actor,
yeah,
like
Solo.
Zolo, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So like it's very much like that the authentic Mexica, name. Yeah.
yeah,
No, now all kind of shit. Yeah, we're Latinos. Yeah, but it's honestly like I really hope there's more movies for him because he was very much because he was literally the star of the show.
yeah. He had
I
a lot of
I know he's the main character, but like man, he in the same way as like you would see like I guess Iron Man being played by Robert Downey Jr. and so on and so forth. You can see Solo playing Jaime Reyes.
yeah, like he definitely fits the role very well.
Hmm.
Yeah, like, and I will say this about the Blue Beetle suit too, because I know, like newer incarnations have him like have this weird mouth thing
Yeah.
going
It,
on with it, which
yeah,
kind of looks,
in the comics he has a mouth.
yeah, which I always look kind of weird, so it is interesting that he kind of just went with more
Like a mask on, like moving up and down, kind of
yeah,
like a Spider-Man thing.
yeah,
But like you can see the mouth, like the what would be the mouth movement,
yeah,
because you see the jawline move. Yeah, no, I like that. I like that a lot. Because like the mouth thing, it's done in comics because it's so that you can see there being like also kind of like it's kind of like an exosuit,
mm,
so it kind of makes sense. Um, but like you can kind of understand like why that would look so goofy in like a live action. Like don't get me wrong, I like it when there's like goofiness to the costumes and when it's translated well, it's translated well. But like, no,
yeah. I feel like if they try to go with that, I feel like it'd be a little too like uncanny valley.
yeah, but it does give it a good tokusatsu feel.
That too. Which,
Yeah.
by the way, that I will say the last the final battle does have that tokusatsu vibe a little
Mhm.
bit,
Oh yeah.
which I won't lie, like that's kind of fun.
Yeah. Which was funny because I think that's part of the reason it was designed that way for Jaime.
Hmm.
They were much like, hey, this is pretty cool. Why don't you add that in there? I may be wrong, but hey, if I hope I'm not, because you know, little borrowing here and there. Um, Obviously now we talked about Jaime and his family. Your thoughts on the villain?
Um, yeah. I I do think she's she's all right as a villain.
Hmm.
I would really like to remember what her name is.
Aside from her lesbian name being Cord.
Yeah, like there is like a bit of implication that she might have had a hand in the fate of the second Blue Beetle, which is kind of
Yeah.
interesting, considering their family and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but besides that, she definitely feels a little over the top, kind of just typical I'm rich and evil
Hmm.
and
Victoria.
yeah, Victoria Cord. And yeah, I mean, I think she's okay. Definitely not like not really anything to write home about. She does have her motivations and stuff, but it just she did feel just a little bit underdeveloped and a bit over the top
Hmm.
in some areas. Like it feels like they could have done more with her in terms of like, oh, make her a bit more interesting instead of just being like, I'm just rich and evil and I just want to use the scarab to make my own army of like kind of Blue Beetles, but not really, you know.
Yeah, the superhero villain in this one is Omak, which I mean it fits the role, but yeah, it's all right. Well, it has a nice connection between that and I think it was Crisis on Infinite. No, Crisis on Infinite Earths was the first one, and Infinite Crisis was the second one. Then was Final Crisis, and then some other shit. Oh
So
man,
many
damn
goddamn
Crisis.
crises.
Yeah, I mean that's how it started off, right? I mean, and it's funny because already I was talking about how they include Ted Kord's a lot of stuff from the comics with Ted Kord, um, because there's a moment I'm not gonna go that deep into it where they kind of allude to something that happened to him in the comics, but obviously that doesn't happen in this movie, which I find I don't know, it's a really cool nod to the comic, but I felt like, you didn't really need to put that in there because in the comics, Ted Kord is killed by um, Maxwell Lord, the character that Pedro Pascal plays in Wonder Woman 1984, and because of that, it's what lets Wonder Woman stab his neck. Shit, it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and then obviously,
You're not getting that.
no.
Pedro Pascal is not gonna show up is gonna show up out of nowhere and shoot a man in the head.
Also, like this is as far as we understand, this is part
Mm.
of the new continuity where we don't even know if. Well, I mean, it's highly likely
She's not coming
that
back.
yeah, that Gal Gadot might not come back as Wonder Woman. Although there's rumors that she might be. Again, we'll get into that in a whole separate
Mm.
thing. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I also would agree that doesn't really make sense.
Mm.
Although, like, I think out of all the other references out there, we do know that I think Jaime went to Gotham University, I think,
Which is nice. I like that.
and we do hear like a name drop of Bruce Wayne
Mm-hmm.
on the TV,
Now with this,
as
it's
well as
interesting.
obviously like name drops of like say Superman stuff, but we don't see them, which
No.
I think obviously it's on purpose, so that
Yeah, yeah.
way you know.
And we can talk about more of that later too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I agree with you with the fact because like there was like I felt like she was very like I'm not saying she was a terrible villain, but it's like her motivations were very like But then like as we were talking about it, it was like, oh no, this is her motivation. And I was like, wait, what? I don't want to. Oh wait, you're right. Because there's a subplot, not a subplot, but there's a nod, not nod. There's a passing like detail of her being like not chosen to take over the company because they chose her brother Ted.
Yeah, like it's something that Jenny mentions of like, oh, her Victoria and her father ran the company for a while, but
Hmm.
then when their father died, in his will, he passed the company ownership to Ted Cord, not Victoria.
Who didn't really do much of work
Yeah,
in their eyes,
who wasn't
in
like
her eyes,
as
I'd
in
say,
yeah,
yeah.
in her eyes wasn't as involved in the business.
Hmm.
So obviously, that's sort of like one of her big motivations of like, I'm returning the company back to what it was, like,
Hmm.
because basically Ted Cord went with a more humanitarian slash what's the word I'm looking for, philanthropic approach
Yeah.
to Cord
Industries.
Industries, like helping out all these other like stuff, while Victoria was more like, we got to go back to making weapons and stuff. That's where the real money's at,
Hmm.
you know.
And like there's like this really cool and uh, like this really cool like commentary on some stuff. There's a lot of commentary in this movie. Some of them done well, some of them I'm like, need a little work, but I get what you're going with.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of commentary, I was like, oh, this is really good commentary. But I think it's overshadowed by some of the stuff that Victoria does. It's sort of like, yeah, she is a woman scorned, because of like, social standings and all this stuff. But that's not her reasoning. But it half the time, it doesn't seem like that's what it is.
Yeah, I would argue that it just feels more like it's there as like a reason,
Yeah.
but they never focus fully on it because she's so kind of over the top like bad guy.
Mhm.
That it's like, oh, she's probably just a dick, you know?
Yeah, and like you're gonna get that feeling from her, and I think that was like one of the intentions. But like the fact that they try to give her a reason as to why she's also doing that such things, it doesn't work, right? Once you realize that thing, her motivation of the fact that she was like not given the company because obviously she is not a man, right?
Uh-huh.
Because we can assume that the dad was mostly in charge with the daughter, with her doing like some of the work too,
Yeah.
right? And he was like, no, I'm just gonna give it to my son because misogyny.
Yeah.
But it's like you never, but like when you realize that, but also like there's this aspect of her, it doesn't like connect well, or it's not conveyed as well, and it starts to crumble on itself, right? Now I may be wrong in my opinion, but
That's how it came across,
that's how it
right?
came across because like there was an itch to me. I was like, something about this lady doesn't feel like right. She is not, like I said, overly cartoony, but not a terrible villain, right?
Yeah, like more forgettable than anything, which I
Yeah.
mean, that's probably what you don't want to have your villain be. You want your villain to be sort
Mhm.
of like, I don't know, because obviously like the thing about it too is that it feels like she barely has any interactions with Jaime other than he has the scarab, I want the scarab
Mhm.
kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of a means to an end. Like, who cares? You
Yeah.
know?
There's never like a moment where she's just like, "Oh, aren't you that one kid? Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
What was your name again? Jamie."
yeah. Because they do have a meeting beforehand, but
Yeah.
she's obviously not doesn't really care much about the kid.
Yeah.
So she doesn't even know his name.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like it feels like there should be some sort
Mhm.
of confrontation, but it's more like I guess it's more. It feels more like Victoria's more of like Jenny's issue to deal with, which I guess makes sense because like again, a lot of the movie is just straight up like family, like
Mhm.
the importance of family and the familial bonds, and certainly the difference between Jaime and his relationship with his family and Ginny and Victoria's relationship with each other.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah, and it's very like that's what I'm saying. Like once you bring that into question and you think about some of the motivations for her and but some of her actions, it's like it feels really weird, right? Like at the end of the day, she's not meant to. I don't think she's meant to be that sympathetic. Well, no, if you're going with that logic as to why she didn't get the company, it kind of supposed to makes you feel sympathetic that like her actions, it's weird, right?
I mean, I guess you can argue like because the thing is the way
Hmm.
it's mentioned, like
It's such a throwaway line.
yeah, such a throwaway line that you kind of feel like it's not supposed to make her sympathetic.
Hmm.
Like okay, yeah, sure, maybe that's a reason, but like it's not enough of a reason to make you feel sympathetic that oh yeah, no, this lady is just
Yeah.
bad.
Or any form of anything. It's just like a throwaway line, but it's like at the same time there's like an aspect of truth to that and like a very good reason for her to be the way she is, aside from like being an asshole.
Hmm.
And like there's like this I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like once you realize that, it kind of falls apart on itself, right? And I don't think people are gonna notice it.
It's more. I think what people are gonna notice is just like she's kind of bland, and
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
There's a, but with the line that said, it feels like oh she could have been more interesting
Mhm.
of a villain, but the movie doesn't take advantage of it, so she still just ends up being bland and
Mhm.
kind of forgettable.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah. Um, One thing I will note that I really liked about this movie, though I feel like part of it was kind of like just like a really weird showcase at the same time, was how much they talk about pop culture from Mexico.
Yeah, like
Like
certain.
there's a reason I'm wearing a Chaplin Colorado shirt.
Yeah, there's a lot of references to various pop culture stuff that like Mexican or Mexican Americans would know.
Chicano kind of shit, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, some of it that I mean, it works for what
Yeah.
it is. Um, I know there's like a reference to the soap opera where I'm like, where you're like, oh yeah, I know that, and I'm just like, what the fuck is that again? There's so many, they all look the same to me, at a
Yeah,
certain point. So
because you didn't watch it. You were still like a kid. Like, I
yeah,
remember watching it.
like yeah, because in my brain I'm just like, they all look the same to me, dude. Like,
Mm. Like, I barely cared when I was even at that age.
yeah, it's just a bunch of melodrama of
They
like,
even referenced the Mexican Dracula.
yeah, I think it was that one scene with the
Yeah,
candles and stuff,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah,
they're watching on the TV.
yeah. I was like, you mean to tell me like all these things that like we grew up on and know of ourselves all just happen to be on the same channel?
Well, it was not on the same channel. She's just flipping through the
Yeah, I mean
channels.
like
It was,
on the same time slot.
I don't know, I guess.
It felt like I said, like I liked it, but I was just like, what the hell? I felt like we stopped the movie for a second.
A little bit.
Yeah, we did.
I mean, I feel like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just kind of like one of those, like, oh, that's kind of a neat thing to see.
Mhm.
And to be fair, I think it works in the context of the movie. I think it works most
Yeah.
part. I don't think it ever takes away from like
No.
that stuff, especially for like an American audience. That's
Mhm.
just like, okay, that's just alright.
Yeah, that was one of those like I guess it was, I wouldn't say a cameo, but it's one of those like Easter eggs for people. Like if you grew up with that kind of stuff, you would know it. You recognize it immediately. Like I said, there's stuff that even you would recognize.
I like how you pointed out that there was a bag of Takis in the background, and I'm just like, so.
I
I
was
mean,
just like, oh no, it just like I was like, oh shit, some Takis.
it's like, okay, yeah, sure, I guess, yes, Mexican Americans do eat a lot of spicy snacks. What's the point here? I'm not.
I just thought it was funny.
I know. I mean, listen.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, if there was like actual like snacks from Mexico, then I'd be like, okay, that's kind of neat.
Yeah,
But
wow, what was it called? It's on the tip of my tongue. Is the one with the little clown head?
yeah, I think they're called Sabritas.
Yes, yeah. No. I'm talking about like the candy, like the one that was
Oh,
on the tip.
I
You
know
know,
what you're talking about.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Duntalines and all that shit.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Fucking random ass bimbo in there.
I mean, to be fair, I feel like Bimbo would work. I mean,
Bimbo
that's
would work.
yeah.
I remember seeing a lot of bimbo.
That's a whole bread
Sabritas,
thing. Yeah.
yeah. Oh my god.
But yeah, like I said, it doesn't take away from the movie. It's kind of one of those things of like, it's a blink if you miss it kind of thing.
Mhm.
Uh, it's fine. It adds a lot of like, I guess, interesting layers.
Mhm.
Because Jaime is Mexican American, and they do sort of lean into it.
Mhm.
Like obviously you have the whole like grandma who doesn't speak a whole lot of English, speaks Spanish all the time, kind of
Mhm.
thing. That happens in a lot of movies about Mexicans or Hispanics in general.
Yeah. She did the one thing I'm like, oh damn, that hits home.
Sadly, there are no chanclas being thrown, so sorry.
God, that would have been hilarious.
Like sorry for all the people who thought that was gonna
Instead of
happen.
her giving her, they should have found a weapon that was just a chancla. She was just like rummaging around, like I need my chancla.
Yeah, I guess to be fair, what they did do with her is also just kind of interesting.
Yeah, they did.
But anyways, yeah. I
Mhm.
think what other stuff I'm trying to think about to
Mhm.
talk about, because I think the villain was definitely probably the weakest part.
Mhm.
Um, I do think some of the pacing was a little
Mhm.
off in some moments, because I feel like the first like part kind of drags on a little bit.
It did. It was my least favorite part. There were moments where I'm just like, oh my god, please, just can we move on, kind of stuff. Like I'm not in a terrible way. I was like, okay, I get it. I don't find this funny at all, kind of stuff. Um,
Yeah, because I think you were kind of like some of the dialogue choices of some
yeah.
it
Like
was
there
off.
was there were just like weird like things about the dialogue. I don't know. I've just never been a real fan of like we're speaking English and then we randomly throw like some Spanish slang in there and I'm like not in a like a natural way. It felt very were forced, like it didn't feel genuine. I guess would be the thing I'm trying to say.
Hmm.
Like it didn't feel like natural. It felt very like trying to.
Trying too hard to
Yeah,
incorporate Spanish into like
yeah. But as the movie went on, I was like, okay, now that's how you do it. Yeah, especially
hmm.
when it came with with like the older family members, like the mom, the grandma, the uncle, the dad, kind of stuff like that. I was like, that's what I'm looking for.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that was just yeah, that was for me. But like for me, like my favorite part was probably the second the middle part of of the film where it felt like a totally different movie. Like there was like some stuff I'm like, man, this is tense, and I'm loving it.
Hmm.
Yeah, and the third arc like, was almost there, but I felt like there was some part of it that was slotched. I think you mentioned like there was a lot of like moments where it felt like we stopped for a second.
Yeah.
Like it was building up, stop, like not only like a quick stop, it was like a little bit of a long stop, and it was like keep going and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But no, I like I said, I didn't like it. Now the question is whether or not this is part of the actual DC universe or anything like that.
I know James Gunn has mentioned that it technically is,
Mm.
but the film itself does its best to like acknowledge that it is part of the DC universe, but not like fully commit to what exactly. Which
It's I think it's in the same vein as like Peacemaker and stuff like that, right? Where it's part of the DC universe, but not maybe not the exact one.
well, I mean, we know that Peacemaker is getting a second season, and as far as we can only assume that it's gonna be part of the new continuity,
Hmm.
right?
We can
So
only assume.
I mean, I don't know. I kind of figure. And
Hmm.
as to, I guess the other big elephant in the room of like, hey, you know, this movie might bomb. What does that mean for Zach? And I was like, sure. Uh, well, there's probably some people that are thinking that. What does this mean for James Gunn and the future of the DC Cinematic Universe? Does it? Are we already, facing a dud and stuff like that? And it's like, I would say that given the fact that Blue Beetle started off production in like the in between
Yeah.
of sort of transitioning of DC heads and
Hmm.
stuff, like I wouldn't consider it like James Gunn has his vision, right?
Hmm.
And it will start with Superman Legacy.
Hmm.
Uh, and that will be sort of like the actual real test of whether or not James Gunn's vision for the DC universe on film will actually work.
Hmm.
Because I mean, I know some people were like saying, "Oh, Flash is bad because it's part of James Gunn's thing," or even though it's not.
No.
Like the Flash, just it adds it's its own bag of worms.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that was more of like we just need to release this. It's just get it out, and it performed terribly. Well, I feel like Blue Beetle will eventually perform well because at least there'll be a good word. It just needs a good word of mouth, and it's probably gonna be. And sometimes movies take a while for it to
I mean, similar thing happened with I think that Pixar film Elemental.
Elementals. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Everyone's like, oh, it bombed. I'm like,
it
oh,
bombed,
it
and
made its money
then
back.
I mean, granted, it had help with overseas audiences,
Yeah.
especially from Korea, because from what I understand, the director was Korean, and like the whole story is kind of like just a metaphor for how he grew up in the states,
How she grew up. Yeah.
or he or she, or whatever. I don't know. I don't remember the actual
I'm I'm
gender of the
I'm pretty sure it's a she.
yeah, because the main character is a
Yeah.
woman, right?
Yeah.
The point is, like and that kind of resonated with a lot of Korean audiences overseas, and
Mhm.
that helped boost sales. So I mean, we don't know what. I mean, Blue Beetle, I believe, only had a budget of like 120 million, and then
Mhm.
maybe add like marketing and stuff, about 24,
Yeah.
240 million.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, because the way it works is that you got to make not only the money back for the production, but also the money for marketing, which are two separate payments, right?
yeah, I mean, yeah, as well as sharing profits with theater chains and all that stuff. The point is like Blue Beetle always, I don't was at least I feel like budgeted well enough so
Mhm.
that I don't think it would be like that big of a loss unless
No.
it's like super catastrophic. But I do agree that I feel like good word of mouth because I mean honestly from looking at reviews and stuff, it does seem like for the most part, people are kind of leaning towards it being, yeah, it's solid. It's
Yeah,
good. It's
yeah,
not the best thing ever, but like it's good. It's
yeah.
not the Flash.
It's definitely not the Flash.
It ain't no Black Adam.
Ain't no fucking Black Adam.
It's a good movie.
Yeah, like those movies were made in between either in between the like the transfer of power or before the transfer of power. But it's the Blue Beetle in itself. A lot of people were writing on it. A lot of people wanted to see it. I remember because it was supposed to be originally for Max only.
Yeah, it was one of those projects that was originally going to be on HBO Max, now just called Max because
Mm.
Warner Discovery's a bunch of idiots. Um, and
Mm.
yeah, it was one of the movies that were like, hey, you know what? No, let's give this the proper feature film thing, right?
Yeah, let's release it in theaters because a lot of vocal people and they'll show up. Don't worry. But yeah, what's your rating for this movie?
I am leaning towards, I would say 7.5.
I'm in agreement of that. Like it's a there's aspects about the movie that I feel just didn't work really that well, or like it didn't reach the height it wanted to, but it still has like that sort of heart and charm that I feel like it needed. That's my reasoning, but yes, I do agree 7.5. I don't know what your reasoning is.
No, yeah, I think the villain, because I feel like for the most part, the pacing was kind of off for a little bit, but I can kind of forgive it for a little bit. But it really is just more of the villain being kind of just bland.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, the guy in the OMAC suit is kind of interesting,
Yeah,
but like you only get to see like his full backstory by the end, and it's like, oh, okay, like
I guess.
yeah, like I mean, he's a solid like henchman villain kind of thing
Hmm.
for the most part, but yeah, like the villains aren't really that interesting, so it just feels like I don't
I'll
know,
say
like
this: when you look like something that came out of straight out of Anthem, you're already in trouble with me.
yeah, that was the funny thing about that. Like, oh, this guy looks like he's been ripped out of Anthem. Remember that game? That was supposed to be the next big thing.
No, exactly. But yeah, no, I think 7.5 is a really good one. But here's the thing: we give it 7.5, but in our hearts, Jaime hit.
Yeah, I won't lie. Yeah, like Jaime is a cool guy.
Yeah, I want to see more of my boy. Mi gente, amigo. Mi gente.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I do. I probably would agree with that. I think for the most part, uh, if you wanted to do your best to make a likable superhero, I mean, Blue Beetle definitely has all those qualities
It
for me.
has all those qualities, and you want to see more. But yeah, that's the end of the episode, guys. Be sure to follow us on social media: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We're most active on Instagram, and there's a link tree on Instagram for all the podcasts that we're officially part of, like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, all the like, and a link to a YouTube for your audio listeners out there who want to put a face to the voice. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. We have a Patreon, really just there just for show and any form of support. But yeah, Blue Beetle is go watch it. It's a really good movie. It's really good, really solid. You'll enjoy your time. Now all I need is for Marvel to do Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider.
Well, I mean, technically they did do it in the Agents of Shield show, but I know what you mean.
I want him in that screen, bro. I,
Like,
I want him up there.
yeah, it would be kind of cool. I mean, there's a listen. We're bringing back a bunch of like characters from other like Marvel like TV show stuff, like
Mhm.
Daredevil and stuff. So I am still kind of surprised that we haven't, considering at the time like that was actually good reception for Robbie.
Oh yeah, no, Robbie's always been very popular. He's
So
yeah, he beat out all the other not Johnny and Danny Ketch.
mhm,
More so not other like not Johnny Blaze Ghost Riders.
yeah,
I can go through the list, and the only three people that pop up is
Johnny Blaze.
Johnny Blaze, as Johnny Cage's MK, um, the other boy, Danny Ketch, and Robbie. So yeah. But anyways, guys, yeah, have a good one. Peace.